Guys. So today we're going to be reacting to Piers Morgan podcast. He's basically going to talk about what happened to Rob Reiner, the Bondi Beach terror attack, and basically just have on a bunch of guests. So we're basically just going to react to that.
That just crosses every line of just basic human decency to me. Rob Reiner was murdered last night. Whatever side of the divide you're on, this is just unacceptable.
I don't care what you think of that war. There is no justification, there's no reason for mowing down Jews.
But the Israelis say, no, we're allowed to kill 20,000 kids. And no one should be able to condemn that. But every Muslim on planet Earth have to condemn these lunatics as if these lunatics represent us.
James, I think it's very immoral that you couldn't just take one conversation about a shooting in Australia without comparing it to a war in Gaza.
90% of Muslims are peaceful and lovely and amazing, but if 10% wants to bring down the West, you're looking at a heck of a lot of people.
Jillian, I've had to sit here and listen to y'all go back and forth. Can I please make this point?
There seems to be this struggle inside the soul of Islam between those who believe in live and let live and those who believe in death to the infidels.
Every generation tends to think that our moment in history is as bad as it's ever been, that the struggles, divisions, and tensions that we're wrestling with right now are uniquely pivotal. It's obviously not true, but that doesn't mean that everything is always getting better either. And sometimes, however temporarily, they are very clearly getting worse. Yesterday, father and son Islamists killed 15 people in a chilling anti-Semitic terrorist attack on Jewish people celebrating Hanukkah on Bondi Beach in Australia. The knee-jerk reaction of many on social media was again to blame all Muslims, but it very quickly emerged that one of the heroes of the day was Ahmed al-Ahmed, a 43-year-old Muslim fruit seller who risked his own life to save countless others. You're perfectly entitled to have a view that every immigrant from a Muslim country should be kicked out of the West.
Yeah, I saw this video. I think he also died because I think since he let him go, he went back up with his friend who was shooting the other people on the bridge, and then apparently I guess this guy shot him and then he died because he didn't want to kill this guy just right here and now, which is it's a terrible thing because I'm pretty sure there in Australia, if he did shoot him and he died, then he wouldn't have, I mean, he would still be a hero because he stopped him and then he killed him to stop him from killing other people, but then they would have held him liable for killing this guy. Like, I'm pretty sure they would have done that because Australia is pretty stupid when it comes to their gun laws and, like, stuff like this. So I'm pretty sure they would have just thrown him in jail even though he's a hero. So
you have to reckon with the fact that it's divisive and reductive because people like Ahmed al-Ahmed, who is a Syrian immigrant to Australia, are exactly the type of people we should want in our countries, no matter which God they pray to. It should be possible to loathe and condemn anti-Semitism without resorting to Islamophobia, just as it should be possible to say BLM went much too far without being overtly racist, and that you disagreed with some of what Charlie Kirk said or believed without grotesquely celebrating his death as so many did. That was the position of Hollywood legend Rob Reiner, who along with his wife Michelle was murdered in horrific circumstances this weekend. When you first heard about the murder of Charlie Kirk, what was your immediate gut reaction to it?
Well, horror, absolute horror. And I unfortunately saw the video of it, and it's beyond belief what happened to him, and that should never happen to anybody. I don't care what your political beliefs are. That's not acceptable. That's not a solution to solving problems. And I felt like what his wife said at the service, that the memorial they had, was exactly right.
The default position in the age of social media is tribal loathing. We've seen plenty of it on both sides this weekend, just as we saw it after the National Guard terror attack in DC, and again with the fraud scandal in Minnesota. We're seeing it in some of the reactions to the death of Rob Reiner, including an extraordinary statement just a few minutes ago from President Trump. It might make people feel better, but if they're any interest in living in a contented and genuinely united society, the truth is they're making it a lot worse. Well, joining me to debate this, founder and CEO of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, the host of Keeping It Real, Gillian Michaels, host of Democracy-ish, Wajaha Ali, and the journalist and host of the Emily Austin Show, Emily Austin, and Roland Martin, host of Unfiltered. Welcome to all of you. Look, I was going to start with the horrific attacks in Australia, and we'll come to those, obviously. But as we've come on air, Cenk Uygur, Donald Trump has gone on his Truth Social platform to talk about Rob Reiner. Now, I interviewed Rob Reiner on this show 3 months ago. And aside from what he just said about Charlie Kirk, as we just heard, which was, I thought, extraordinarily gracious, given he politically disagreed with almost everything Charlie Kirk stood for. Notwithstanding that, Rob Reiner just got brutally murdered, along with his wife, it appears, by their son, who's had many years of battling drug addiction and homelessness, and appears to have gone crazy and stabbed them both to death in the most barbaric of circumstances, is now under arrest with a $4 million bail. Donald Trump has just posted this. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump Derangement Syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace.
So, that political take, well, Trump basically turned a homicide into a political statement or judgment or situation, because like maybe he did have TDS, but what does that have to do with him getting killed by his son? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, that was a dumb take by Trump. That really was.
You know, I gotta say, Cenk, that just crosses every line of just basic human decency to me. Yeah, Rob Reiner was murdered last night by his troubled, unhinged son. And to make political capital, and what angers me about it is there was all the outrage from Trump supporters, rightly, when the left mocked Charlie Kirk after he was murdered. And I thought we'd reached a kind of consensus that this, whatever side of the divide you're on, this is just unacceptable. That when people get murdered, you just show basic respect. And it's just happened as we came on air. I just thought we've got to start with this, because when you're the most powerful man in the world, listen, everyone knows I've known Trump a long time, but this is one of those times when many times he's been like this when big public figures have died. I remember it with John McCain. I remember it with Colin Powell. And each time I just wince at the lack of basic decency. What is your reaction to that?
Well, you saw that I came on here and I was brokenhearted when Charlie Kirk was killed. And I condemned the people celebrating it because, my God, if you're part of the peace movement, you're on the left, etc. We're supposed to be for nonviolence more than anybody else. So, and that was disappointing at that time. And then Donald Trump, among others, said it was the most outrageous thing they'd ever seen. For him to do it now to Rob Reiner, I mean, and for what? For what? I mean, did this guy advocate for some heinous thing? Not at all. And here's what I want people to understand about Rob Reiner. So he was obviously an enormous figure in Hollywood. Some of the movies that we all love, like Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally, etc., right? But on top of that, here's something that no one could argue with. Rob Reiner was a true American patriot. He loved this country. Now, whether you agreed with him or disagreed with him on any issue, he's a guy who put his heart into this country and always tried to make it better. You could see patriots like that, whether they're on the right or the left, who deeply care about their fellow man. And Rob Reiner was definitely one of those people. He was the best of us. And to die in such a tragic way, and then to have the president of the United States rub it in and somehow make it about himself. Look, I can get angry at Donald Trump. We've all been angry at Donald Trump. But if you're on the right, more than anything else, you should just be deeply disappointed Is this what you wanted? Is this the ha, you're dead kind of mentality that you wanted? It sounded like after Charlie died that you really, really didn't want that you thought it was a terrible thing to do.
Well, that's the
excuses.
point. Yeah, look, that's the point, Gillian, that I would make, is it's going to be very interesting to me what people on the conservative right in America say by way of their reaction to what Donald Trump has said here. Because
I think most people on the right are not going to agree with what Trump said on that statement. I believe that. Like, they're going to be like, this has nothing to do with anything for what we believe on the right. Like, I'm pretty sure they're just not going to agree with him. Like, they're going to think it's stupid.
If there's any support for this from MAGA, from his supporters, his friends, from anyone, then it flies completely in the face of that whole debate after Charlie Kirk, when so many on the left behaved disgustingly. I remember calling it out at the time. And then here, the idea that he was murdered because of something to do with his views of Donald Trump, which is complete nonsense. It's. I'm not just disappointed. I'm angry with it.
I completely agree with you and Cenk here. I will say that when I woke up and learned about this, it was on Brandon Tatum's Instagram, and he actually showed the clip of you talking to Rob Reiner. So my hope is that any reasonable person on the right or the left finds political violence disgusting, any support of it disgusting, and I'm with both you and Cenk. There's zero pushback over here. I'm extremely disappointed in the way Trump
it's not even, there's not even a suggestion it's political violence in this case, right? We don't know why the son did this.
Well, either way, if Trump was trying to imply that it was because of Trump derangement syndrome, any violence of any kind,
I don't think you are.
Reprehensible. I'm not quite sure exactly what he was trying to imply, but I'm disappointed by his response. I have yet to see anybody on the right endorse that statement or celebrate the death of Rob Reiner. I certainly hope we don't, and I promise you that I would absolutely condemn anybody who does that.
Right. Let me bring Wajah in. I want to play a clip. This is another clip from the interview I did with him. I spoke to him for 45 minutes, literally in mid-September. It was a great interview. And I was very struck, actually, by the more mollifying tone that he took throughout this interview about Trump, who he has been very critical of in the past. There's no question. He's ranted away about Trump, like many in Hollywood have done. But in that interview, he struck a very different tone. And here's him talking about Trump and the fact the left kept calling him Hitler. Senator Ted Cruz has come out and said that people should stop using the Nazi rhetoric. And I feel very strongly about this. I think that you can absolutely go after Donald Trump in an aggressive way, but calling him Hitler or calling his supporters Nazis, I think crosses every acceptable line.
It doesn't get you where you want to be. I don't really know very many things that I agree with him on, but I also feel that if you go name calling like that, it's not going to get you what you want. You have to rally people around the things that you agree with that are in disagreement with Donald Trump. And to me, the one area that, again, we both agree on is the freedom of speech and in the Constitution, First Amendment.
There's an irony there with Jahat about the name calling, because I don't know what Donald Trump thinks he'll achieve with this rant about Rob Reiner, as his body is still warm from this brutal murder. But whatever he thinks it will achieve, it will only, I think, anger and disappoint a lot of Americans, if not all Americans. And I just don't understand why he would use his gigantic platform so soon after someone is murdered to do this.
The harsh truth is this is who Donald Trump is. This is who he has always been. He's been cruel. He's been vulgar. He's lacked empathy. I mean, you just saw this right now. I'm glad you brought it up because I read it right before I came on your show. Rob Reiner and his wife, it seems that they were brutally and tragically murdered by their son, who apparently had mental health issues and drug problems. He was a beloved.
Yeah, I think, honestly, Trump should retract that truth statement. And he should probably, issue an apology for trying to make something political that isn't really. Like, I really think he should.
Beloved director, and you're seeing Donald Trump right now, who is the president of the United States, folks. He's the commander in chief. He's the representative of our country. And you just hope any president, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. What they say is this is a terrible tragedy, thoughts and prayers. Simple as that. But we've seen Donald Trump just even recently with Erica Kirk. I was on your show, and we all praised. It was a consensus amongst the panel that when she forgave the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, we all said that was very brave and a beautiful thing to do at the Arizona rally. What did Donald Trump do right after she said it? He goes, I don't forgive. I'm not as forgiving. Like, why would you say that? And then also after he survived the assassination attempt, if you remember at the RNC, Pierce, he had that patch on his ear. They gave him a script. He was supposed to be decent, kind, meditative for the first 20 minutes. And then he mocked and ridiculed Paul Pelosi, who survived an assassination attempt by David DePape.
All right, well, I guess Trump really is cruel, but he's cruel against the people he thinks are his enemies or are his enemies. I'm not saying it's right, but it is pretty funny in certain instances when he does make jokes like that. This one, for the saying it was TDS that got him killed, that's not funny. But some other times when he's like, he's pretty funny.
So this is who he is. And Pierce, if I may say, he's been like this for 10 years. I've been saying it. Chank's been saying it. Roland's been saying it. For everyone waking up today, where you been? This is who he is.
Well, where I've been, I've always called it out when he's done it after people die. I think there's a particularly distasteful aspect, and I'll bring Emily in here. When people have just been murdered, whether it's Charlie Kirk, whether it's Rob Reiner, it doesn't matter to me what their politics are. When they've been brutally murdered, the only decent, civilized human...
I would say this. Trump does not need to be given the left, CNN, NBC, whatever, news media. He does not need to be giving them any juice or fire, because, they're going to run for days with this because of what he said. This was a stupid statement, because now they're just going to give it a rinse, repeat, and just always bring this up about how cruel he is. Bro, that was dumb on his part. Yeah, it was dumb.
The thing to do is to just be respectful or do nothing. If your genuine feeling is what he's just ranted, well, don't say it.
Right. I feel like as the president of the United States, he does not, with all due respect, have any obligation to need to tweet about Rob Reiner. I feel like he has, other things going on, and that's reasonable. If I were in Trump's inner circle, would I had told him to post this? Probably not. I'd suggest strongly for him to just not say anything at all. The first I'm ever hearing of Rob Reiner is that he has Trump derangement syndrome, and that still doesn't change any of my empathy towards him. I didn't know who he was. I'm hearing now he was talented. In fact, one of the first impressions I've had of him was Donald Trump's tweet. But I really think we're doing a disservice by drawing parallels from this to political violence, even bringing up Charlie Kirk's murder. I get why you brought it up, Pierce, because you're saying, well, if you don't like how the left celebrated his death, don't celebrate this. But nobody's celebrating Rob Reiner's death. I hope, as Jillian said,
it sounds like Donald Trump is getting. Yeah, but look, it does sound like he's getting pretty close to it. I mean, when he says that, he got killed reportedly due to the anger he caused others with his mind-crippling disease, Trump derangement syndrome, there is zero evidence for any of that. He got killed by his deeply disturbed son, after what the TMZ and New York Post and others are reporting was a terrible family argument. The son, Nick, who's now 32, was a screenwriter who battled and talked openly made a film about drug addiction, homelessness, and so on. But apparently, used whatever kind of implement to slit the throats of his parents.
Yeah.
I
hear you. I'm not justifying it.
So
I don't
think there's any political motivation for this attack whatsoever. But Donald Trump has made it political by inferring very clearly that this happened because Rob Reiner attacked him. And that to me is where...
I disagree. I disagree, Pierce. I'll tell you what I think his intention was, and I will also preface by saying he did not get the message across. I feel like his intention was, hey, everybody, look, although this man hated me, and although he had Trump derangement syndrome, he ended it, putting us together with "May they rest in peace," whatever. I feel like what his intention was even though I disagree with him, the guy died, and I'm sorry for him. He did that in possibly the worst way.
Stop it.
And I just don't feel like this is really shocking to anybody here. I feel like we've all been following Trump over the last 10 years. And as Wajahat said, that's his style. You like it or not, that's who he is. This tweet was wrong, but it's not, necessarily so shocking for all of us to see. And also, it shouldn't be going after
I actually did find it quite shocking. And I have known Trump a long time. I am a friend of Trump's, good, bad, and ugly. And I got to say, Roland, I got this.
I would agree. It was kind of like bad timing. I definitely say it was bad timing, that tweet. I was like, is it really? Should you have really said that? Really? I mean, he said some crazy things, but like that was like, I don't think he probably shouldn't have said that.
No defense for this.
There's no defense. I don't know what the hell I just heard. Let's be clear. He has no morals, no values, no decency, no ethics, no principles. This is who he is. This is not a shock at all.
I disagree with that.
He's a narcissist.
Yes.
He is someone who makes everything about him. And so this is who this man is. This is who he was, not in the last 10 years, Piers, but going back to when he was descending down those escalators. Going before that, the whole thing with Obama and the birther. This is who this man is.
Well, he's always been a trash talker.
So I'm not
Roland, hang on.
Not trash talker.
Hang on a second. Look, he's always been a trash talker, right? He's a New York real estate guy. He's a trash talker.
No.
And I would say,
trash talk.
I know, I'm going to come to that. In relation to general trash talk, my God, the left talk trash about him, right? As I said in that clip. So all the Hitler stuff and Nazi stuff, all that, it's a two-way street, the trash talking. This is a particular thing. Which angered me when I saw his reaction to Colin Powell dying, to John McCain dying. I just think there's just got to be, on all sides, when public figures like this die, whether they're great politicians or they're great movie people, whatever it is, there just has to be a basic decency. If people get killed or murdered or whatever it is, or die after great lives and careers, just either be decent or don't say anything.
Here's the deal. This all sides is nonsense. First, listen, the regular average person who's out there on social media, that's one thing. But it's called being a statesman for a reason. I'm literally sitting here. I grabbed my book, Master of the Senate, of LBJ, and it was amazing. Cairo talks about how LBJ, how when he was president, how he spoke and moved differently publicly than he did when he was majority leader of the Senate, because he saw the presidency and the respect for the institution. This person has none. This is no shock. There's a reason I don't even call him president, because he does not rise to the occasion in that way. This is who he is. He will degrade people. He will say these things. I am not shocked by it, because he is despicable in this way. Well, and there's no defense. There's no, I think he meant, he meant exactly what he wrote.
Okay, look, I want to move on to Australia, but I do want to end by just playing a clip, another clip from that interview with Rob Reiner, which I think is a nice way to remember him, because ironically, I said to him, because we've just been talking about Charlie Kirk, I said, Rob, when the day comes when you're no longer with us, and I hope it's not for a long time, very ironic given what's now happened, but I said, I would love to know, out of all your movies, which one would you choose? And he said this: should the moment come when we need to remember the work of Rob Reiner, which is the one for you, of everything you've ever done, that you would most like to be remembered for?
I always say Stand By Me, to me, is the one that meant the most to me. I don't know that it's the best. It's for other people to decide, but it's the one that meant the most to me, because it really is an extension of my personality and my sensibility. It has a mixture of humor and melancholy and emotion, and it's something that is closest to me of all the films I've done.
And he went on to say a really moving thing, which was, I said my favorite one of his movies was When Harry Met Sally, which I think in many ways is almost a perfect movie. Brilliantly written, brilliantly directed, brilliantly acted, and a perfect length. And he talked about the fact that it was about 90 minutes.
I like a few
And he
good
said the
men.
number of people that would come up to him who said on New Year's Eve, which obviously we're just a few weeks away from now, on New Year's Eve, they would start watching it at 10:30 at night on New Year's Eve. So that at the precise moment of the New Year's Eve denouement to the movie, people would actually celebrate the new year and how much he loved that. And that is actually how I'd love Rob Reiner to be remembered, as somebody who actually moved people with the power of his movies. And my God, he had so many great movies. And they were movies of warmth and love and humor and hope and all the things you would want in society. And that is how he should be remembered, I think. So,
Piers, can I make a quick comment about his amazing career? Just real quick. Just for Emily, if you want to go rent some of his movies. Rob Reiner had a generational run of movies for a decade. I just want to name them. I think I could get them at the top of my head in a row. This is Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, Few Good Men. All in a row.
I heard of When Harry Met Sally. I'm gonna watch it.
I mean, name me another director with that type of a run. And in addition, just to being, everyone who knew him said, regardless of what you think about his politics, a really decent, loving, caring man who cared passionately about people, championed rights for women, LGBTQ folks, and cared about our democracy and preserving it.
Yeah, someone did a great tweet. This was Dan Perlman on X. He said, Rob Reiner directed the best American rom-com, When Harry Met Sally, the best coming-of-age film, Stand By Me, the best fantasy comedy, Princess Bride, the best mockumentary, This Is Spinal Tap, and the best courtroom drama showdown, A Few Good Men. He did all that and so much more. So look, I want to move on, but I do think that is how Rob Reiner should be remembered, and not for Trump derangement syndrome, which I'm sad to say says more about the president for saying that than it does about Rob Reiner. Right, let's move on to what I wanted to start with before this blew up, and that's this appalling terror attack in Sydney on Bondi Beach. Emily, let me start with you on this. It's got to be a scary time to be Jewish right now. You know, let's park to one side, and other members of the panel won't want to do this, but let's park the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas to one side for a moment. There are 15 million Jews in the world, and when you see the rising volume.
So, let's just get this straight. You can't park the war aside because that is most likely the reason why that happened. It's because of that war in Gaza. And I'm pretty sure that's why the Muslims targeted the Jewish people in Australia. That's the number one reason why. So you can't park the war aside. That's why they did it. They're doing it to get revenge, number one.
Of attacks on Jewish people because they're Jewish, this has got to be a scary time. And I think that should be recognized. What do you feel? It's a very familiar story when it comes to debt. The banks win.
First and foremost, I feel privileged as an American. That maybe call me ignorant, call me naive. I just still feel very safe as a Jew under Trump's administration. I don't have that privilege overseas. I'm very aware of my surroundings when I travel. Australia is a place of no travel for me because of the failure that we witnessed take fold yesterday. I feel like this could have been prevented. I feel that it was warned multiple times by multiple people. They begged the government at that point to do the one job they're supposed to do, which is to protect its citizens. But yeah, the rise of anti-Semitism, and you mentioned to park the war in Gaza for a moment. Let's park that for this whole conversation, because I don't care what you think of that war. There is no justification. There's no reason for mowing down Jews, gunning down Jews, murdering Jews at all because you don't agree with the war. Because you have to remember, there are people who have the opposing view from you on that war, and the violence is a two-way street. But it seems like the bullets, when it comes to persecution, really only go towards the Jews in this case, and I'd like to see all of the bullets stop as a whole. But what happened in Australia was so easily preventable. And it's so sad, Pierce, that we cannot even celebrate Hanukkah without spending tens of thousands of dollars on security because we are scared that there's going to be someone who's likely an immigrant from another country gunning down Jews.
But, you know,
so the last point I'll make before we open it to the panel is Australia's biggest failure was the mass immigration from countries and the failure to vet them, because I'm not against immigration. I think immigrants contribute a lot to every society. But I just found out that the shooters were previously investigated for ties to ISIS. How about this? The fact that you needed to prompt the investigation was enough to turn them away as immigrants. But nope, they welcomed them. You saw on October 8th the protests that they did in Sydney and all over Melbourne. October 8th, Pierce, Israel had not retaliated yet, chanting globalize the Intifada, death to the, whatever they were cheering, it doesn't even matter. They were calling for violence, and anyone who supports that should be a litmus test as to where your country stands in its safety.
Okay, Cheng, let me bring you in here. This is complicated by one fact, but it's a salient fact to the whole debate about the narrative that many have, which is that, you know, the creeping Islamification, if you like, of the West has been the major problem here, that there are way too many Muslims living in Western countries with a different culture, that many are prone to violence, and that's what we've seen here. But the guy that saved so many lives, Ahmed Al-Ahmed, turned out himself to be a Muslim immigrant from Syria. So by the yardstick of keep them all out, you would also have to keep out the guy who saved many lives and has become not just a national hero in Australia, where he's been a citizen since 2006, I think, but has become a global hero. I mean, several $1 million already been raised in a GoFundMe for him, including people like Bill Ackman, leading Jewish figures in the United States. So this is a complex story because it's not easily dismissed as the way many would like it to be, which is you've got two obviously radicalized extremists, a father and son, who the father had legally 6 firearms, was a member of a hunting club. Australia, for those who don't know, had a terrible mass shooting back in the mid-90s in Hobart and Tasmania. 35 people were killed. As a result, they did some of the most draconian new gun laws anywhere in the world, and it had a dramatic effect on reducing gun violence in Australia. They also had nearly 1 million guns handed back in to the government under a buyback program that was very successful. So this has been a real shock to the system in Australia because they're simply, rather like my country, not used to gun violence. You know, there is 580 times, I know this because Emily asked me about this statistic in relation to guns on X earlier when we were talking about this. Because I don't think you can ignore the gun part either. And I said, look, the bottom line is, you know, Australia has a population of 27 million, America 340 million, but the amount of gun violence in America proportionate to Australia is 580 times worse. 18,000 murders in 2023 in Australia in the same year-long period from June 23 to June 24, 31 gun murders. It's not even, there's no comparison to be made that makes any sense. So my point, I think, Cheng, is if you come from a school of you've got to kick all the Muslims out, then you've got to kick out Ahmed Al-Ahmed when he tries to come in from Syria, yet he's the national hero here. And so it's not as simple as that. There are many good Muslims. There are bad radicalized Muslims. You could.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the one way to solve that is through, I guess, legal immigration. That's one way to solve it. I mean, that's literally the best way, because like you can't kick them out just because of what they believe. Like, I agree with that. You can't just kick people out just because they pray to a different god. You should only kick people out when they're committing a violent act or violent crime. You know, that's the only time you can kick them out and be like, get out of here. But besides that, you just need to prioritize legal immigration and no just letting people in just because. No open borders, just legal immigration. I think that's the number way you can solve that. And if they do commit a crime of this mass shooting, well, I hate to say it, but yeah, I feel sad and I feel sorry for the people that die, but that's just the world we live in. If you live in America or I guess Australia, you know, that's just the world we live in because our country's allowed us to have guns and people are crazy. And it doesn't matter what religion you come from, people commit horrible crimes all the time. And it usually has nothing to do with their religion sometimes. It's just because they're crazy.
and take the same yardstick to every other religion, right? So this is my problem, and I think Emily and we agreed on something you posted earlier. I'm sorry, Cenk, for the rant here, but I do think it was really important. Emily recognized that it's always wrong in these situations to just blame a religion. It's just wrong. Whatever that religion is, you can't blame 1 billion people for the actions of 2 ISIS radicalized nut jobs on a beach in Sydney. Over to you, Cenk.
Yeah. So there are 2 different issues here. The issue of violence is the relatively straightforward one. So everyone should condemn the violence. Everyone should condemn violent extremists. So I don't know anyone who hasn't, and they'd be monsters if they didn't. So those poor victims there, the 15 people who were killed and the others that were injured, and everyone who was traumatized by it, they didn't deserve that at all. They had nothing to do with any government policy. They were just innocent human beings. So now, if, you know, our position has been very consistent for nonviolence and against killing on both sides. Now, the second issue is propaganda. So when any Muslim extremist that's 2 guys out of 1.6 billion people do it, there is a concerted effort by some, and yes, including Israelis, to say it's all Muslims, it's all Muslims, it's all Muslims. You should hate them. You should kick them out of your countries. They all think this way. And honestly, that kind of propaganda is disgusting. And if we did it to the other side, which we would never, and we said things like it's all the Jews, that would be horrific, right? No one would tolerate that. But when the other side does it, and if you don't think they do it, just go on social media. There are thousands, maybe millions of comments. And yes, about 3 months ago, all of the Israel First pundits started changing, and they literally said, I tweeted about it. One of their influencers was like, it's hard to get the Americans to like Israel. There really is no reason to like Israel and support Israel. But it is easier to get them to hate Muslims. So we should do a propaganda. Now, she didn't say propaganda, to be fair, but she said we should do a campaign to highlight how much Muslims are bad. And now, when we talk about violence, we ask for the same kind of decency. Can we not kill 70,000 people in Gaza, 20,000 kids? But the Israelis say, no, we're allowed to kill 20,000 kids. And no one should be able to condemn that. But you have to, but every Muslim on planet Earth have to condemn these lunatics as if these lunatics represent us. There's also lunatics in every religion and every race, and we lock them up because they are violent and we can't stand violence. And by the way, last thing, if you're on the left and you're part of the peace movement, our whole ethos is nonviolence. So if you do violence, you betray us all. It is immoral, it is unintelligent, it is deeply counterproductive, and it is used by our enemies to further discriminate against Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians, etc. So it is the single worst thing you could do, but mainly, obviously, because of the deep immorality of killing innocent people.
Okay, Gillian, you know,
I think it's very immoral that you couldn't just take one conversation about a shooting in Australia without comparing it to a war in Gaza. There's a difference between celebrating a religious holiday on the beach and, thank God, Hamas losing a very nasty war in the Middle East. But if you want to start equivocating Middle Eastern violence,
there is a difference.
to what
70,000 more
civilizations
dead.
practice,
So you celebrate 70,000 dead? I find you deeply immoral.
And let me tell you something where you're wrong, Cenk, you are wrong.
Because you think that Palestinian Muslim lives don't matter.
You said,
you're a sick person.
Me speak. You said every Israeli says it's all the Muslims. Let me just correct one fact for you. Every time an Israeli is killed in Israel, it is at the hands of a Muslim. And nonetheless, I still don't blame the entire religion as a whole. But that's just the fact of the matter in Israel. So for once in your life, if you could just focus on the victims without equivoc, jealous of what exactly? Jealous of what? We all have our problems.
I said
but for
generous.
5 minutes of your life,
you're so generous for not hating every single Muslim. You just are in favor of murdering 70,000 in Gaza and stealing their land.
All right, let me bring in.
Call a spade a spade.
All right,
you don't have to compare everything to the war in Gaza.
Do you mourn the 20,000 dead kids? Simple question. Do you mourn the dead 20,000
every single child that dies
kids?
is a disaster.
So why are you celebrating Israel doing it?
I said I am celebrating
Israel is wrong.
Let me
Israel
tell you,
is brutal
if Israel
terrorist
had
killers.
lost the war, there
Israel
would
is
be a
wrong.
genocide
Say
of
it.
Jewish people as a whole. I'm happy Israel's
No,
winning
no,
this
there
war.
is no
The fact
genocide
that
of the
20,000
Israelis.
kids
There's
are
only a
dead,
genocide of the
again, is still
Palestinians,
Hamas's
and you won't
fault.
condemn it.
You
Condemn the
can
genocide.
tattoo it on
Are
your
you condemning
forehead.
Israel for
It's
murdering
Hamas's fault
20,000
that
kids?
these children are dead.
All right,
And
hang
nothing
on,
less
hang
until
on,
you
hang
Israel
on.
for
We have got-
murdering
we've got three other panelists.
20,000
No, I'm
kids.
We have
condemning
three other
Hamas for
panelists.
starting
Guys,
the war.
guys.
I'm
Of course
condemning
not.
Hamas
Yes,
for
of
starting
course
the
not.
Guys,
war.
I think we can be.
Yeah, she should condemn that. I mean, obviously she can't do it because, pro-Israeli, but bro, it's not that hard to say like, yeah, I wish my country did not kill 20,000 kids. I wish they'd done better and killed actually the Hamas people. I wish they actually would have done that instead of killing more civilians than they did actual Hamas people. That's very easy to say. Like, that's super easy.
Crystal clear on the genocide point. There's no doubt that Hamas would love
no
to be
genocide.
genocidal.
Hamas would do genocide.
They talk in a genocidal
Correct.
language. I don't think there's much doubt about that. Gillian, let me bring you in here. All right, so we're right into
Israel's
this.
actually doing a genocide. Actually doing it. Not a
In your
theoretical
mind,
one,
Chang,
not a
your mind.
hypothetical
And
one.
Hamas killed.
Because I'm not moving on
Hamas
from
killed as
murdering
many
20,000
Israelis.
kids.
Hamas killed as many Israelis
Good.
as they could
Blame
possibly
Hamas.
kill on October the 7th in a genocidal rampage. So let's not compare genocide with genocide. I want to bring in Gillian.
Israel's civilian kill ratio is worse than Hamas.
All right,
They're
let me
bigger
bring in-
terrorist
It wouldn't
group than
kill you
Hamas.
to
Let
just
me
mourn
bring
the
in
damn
Gillian,
victims
please.
and not bring up
Let me bring in
Gaza.
Gillian, please. Gillian, you've been waiting very patiently.
Yes.
Thank you. Look,
Okay.
let's focus back for a moment because
I'm gonna
there
read
were,
a book
there
while
were
y'all
many,
argue.
many attacks going on Jewish people before October the 7th. All right, so let's be clear about that. This has been a rising problem of anti-Semitism across the world, and there are not many Jewish people in the world. There are 1.6.
But you have to ask why. Why is there a rise? Like, starting in these last, 2 or 3 years, why is there a rise? Like, why has nobody answered the question of why there's a rise? I'm not going to say why. But I'm curious why you guys think there is a rise in anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Billion Muslims, there are 15 million Jews, right? Let's just put the numbers on the table, okay? And like I said to Emily, it must be a scary time to be a Jewish person right now when even celebrating Hanukkah on a beach in Sydney, I've been to that beach, Bondi Beach. It's one of the most fun, positive, entertaining places to be anywhere in the world. The sun always shines, the families always play. And then suddenly, utter carnage with a father and son dressed like paramilitaries, just using shotguns to cold-bloodedly murder a Holocaust survivor, a 10-year-old girl, and so on. So let's just start by calling out how despicable this was on every level, and yet how typical of ISIS and groups like it, the radicalized Islamist extremists who've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, I think there's like a, I don't know what's going on, but like, this started with, I think the first attack was the one in Syria with ISIS, and then, there was the National Guard people got killed by an Afghanistan military men. Then it was the people that got killed in Syria by ISIS. Now it's these people getting shot in Australia. I don't know, man. I think people are awakening and like they see it, like on the news it's happening, and that maybe they get like, I don't know, what's the word? Not agitated, but like hype or something. Like they want to go do it. Like they want to join in on this violence that's happening around the world. Who knows, man?
20 years they've been doing this stuff. And it's a horrible throwback to that. So yes, we can talk about the war, and it's not irrelevant, but I do think we need to put this in some perspective, which is these kind of attacks on Jewish people were going on way before the war started.
Can I address a few of the things that you said previously?
Yeah.
I don't think the alarm is about Muslims migrating to America. I think the alarm is about assimilation. I don't think that these two individuals in Bondi represent what I've been told is actually 2 billion Muslims. But when I talk to people, and I've really been trying to understand and explore this issue, whether it's Gadsat or it's Patrick Bet David, when I talk to people, they'll tell you, yeah, let's say 90%. And I've looked at Pew Research, I've looked at the Global Terror Database. That's a conservative number, right? 90% of Muslims are peaceful and lovely and amazing. But if 10% wants to bring down the West, you're looking at a heck of a lot of people. You're looking at like 200 million people. So what do you do about that? And yes, there are amazing heroes like the man who tried to stop them. But guys, when you look at the fact that there have been 64,000 terror attacks since 9/11 that were committed by radical Islam, 243,000 people died in those terror attacks. And you're saying all religions, I mean, not really. Not really. I've started to read the.
I mean, I do agree. There is less deaths between Jewish and Christian deaths, even pagan. Like there is less deaths with that, because those religions aren't necessarily like a call to like a violent religion. They're more peaceful now. Like Christianity used to be back like that when like they did the Christian Crusades and stuff. They used to be way more violent, but now it's kind of more peaceful now and more docile. But that is true. There is more of that type of violence from the Muslim side. That is true. Don't hate me. That is true.
Quran. And there's a duality there, unquestionably, but there's a lot in there about, kill and subjugate the infidels. So, Cenk, you're a good faith
Jillian.
actor. I think.
Have you ever read the Old
I'm
Testament?
being honest with you.
Have you ever read the Old Testament? It's about
But
slaughtering
Cenk,
all the other tribes. And in fact,
no one's
Netanyahu
acting
quotes
that
it and
out
says,
now.
"Kill,
But
do
Cenk,
like we did
do you
to
know
the
how
Amalekites.
many-
Kill their women and
But Cenk,
children." There are
how many
sick
terror
religious
attacks are being committed by
fundamentalists,
Christians?
and unfortunately, they're Jewish settlers and the Israeli government. They're the
Cenk,
sickest
zero
extremists
terror
in religion
attacks
on the
by
whole
Zionists.
planet.
And I understand you. I understand Gaza, okay, and I see both sides of that, absolutely. And you've made great points to me, and I've listened to you, and I've changed my position on how I feel that the Israeli government has behaved over there. But what I'm trying to tell you simply is that when people are Islamophobic, as I've explored this, I do think they are, and what I think they're afraid of is an ideology that is not in alignment with the West. And it's not the vast majority of Muslims. But when it's, let's say, 10%, it's still a lot of people. These are statistics
Okay, let me bring in
source.
Let me hang on.
That's an outrageous number.
Let me bring in Mujahid to
Pew
respond.
Research
Let me
says
bring in
it's
Mujahid.
60-50.
Let me bring in Mujahid to respond to that. Mujahid.
All right.
Ahmed is a 43-year-old Muslim fruit vendor who, unarmed, decided to bum rush one of.
I'm gonna look this up. Let's see. What percentage? What's it? I can't spell. I'm gonna spell it. Violence to let's see. Pure research. Let's see. Let's see. Well educated. Okay. For identification. Okay. Roughly 6 in 10 Muslim Americans say worse. Okay. Few endorse extremism. Pakistan's less. Okay. I don't see what she's talking about. Let's see. While some intelligence estimates have placed the number of radicals higher in specific localized conflicts, sometimes Cited at 15. This figure out there for this political situation ever. Okay. I didn't see it in there. I was literally looking for the 90%. I didn't see it, so. But from what I see, it is mostly committing terror attacks, or what they consider terror attacks. It is that group of people. That's what I would say.
The terrorists disarmed him, took the gun while he was being shot at. Was shot twice. I didn't realize this at first when I saw that amazing video, but then I later saw that he was shot twice. He held off the other shooter, and he saved lives. In Germany, in March, there was a deranged Saudi national who, by the way, became radicalized by AFD and this type of white nationalism and ended up hating Islam. He rammed a truck in a terrorist attack through a crowd. You know who stopped him? A Pakistani Muslim cab driver in Germany stopped him. When there was an attack on Jews in France a couple of years ago, there was an African black immigrant who protected them. This is the story of an individual who decided to lean into empathy and decency and compassion and squared off against two individuals who were radicalized, we don't know how, and saw Jews as the target through their dehumanization. There are 1.7 billion Muslim people on Earth. Jillian's talking points are from 2001, which is why I yawned. The DeLorean right now is in 2025. Listen, I've been in this for a long time, Jillian. I know you're just discovering this. Congratulations.
I think I've also...
Let me just finish.
Okay,
I let you say a lot of
true,
hateful,
Wajahat.
stupid, reckless things
you
about Muslim Islam. I sat there.
Would you like to say one?
I just sat there.
That's 20
This
million
was a
people.
Jillian. You are
You still
by
have
your own
16
admission.
dead,
You
Wajahat.
by your own admission are a white nationalist. You by your own admission. That's what you are, a white nationalist. You admitted it.
I'm a white
I saw the
You know
clip.
I'm Arab, right?
The number
I'm
one
Syrian and
domestic
Lebanese and
terror
Turkish.
Okay,
And
you're the
so
one who
just
said it.
to be
I didn't say it.
clear-
That's why I was shocked.
When,
Let me just
when
finish.
did I say I was a white nationalist?
Bro's stupid. He thought he had her just because of the way she looked, bro. Bro. You can't assume now anymore. You can't assume, bro. That's why this dude's like, bro, like this dude here, he's like, bro, why would you even say that, bro?
You're not a white nationalist?
when was that?
There was a... Okay, wasn't there
no.
a clip that saying you were a white nationalist? You're not a white nationalist.
No.
Okay, interesting. Interesting to know. All right.
Where's the clip that I said I was a white nationalist?
I'm under the mistaken impression. I thought you were a white nationalist. I'm glad you're not. But let me just finish.
Okay.
Since 2001, Pierce,
I'm
you
a
and I
white
on this
nationalist.
panel, you and I
How
on this
about
panel,
a little
Pierce.
homework, Wajahat? How about just a little?
All right, let's do homework. Since 2001, Pierce, since 2001, you and me, we were against the war on terror. We said that the war on terror would be disastrous. We said that the war on terror, that America's response to 19 foreign hijackers bringing down the two towers would be would cause immense chaos, dissension. What happened? America went to war with Iraq and Afghanistan off of terrible evidence, off of the same type of bullshit that Jillian's saying right now. If even 1% of Muslims, yada yada yada. What happened?
It's
over
all fact-based.
1 million
Do you want me to cite
Iraqis
the
were killed.
resources?
Over
Where would
1
you like
million
me to
Iraqis were
start?
killed. Just Jillian, let me finish. Over 1 million
Pew
Iraqis were killed.
research, counterterrorism discourse intelligence estimate,
and it led to the radicalization
the European
of ISIS.
Court of Human
It brought
Rights.
nothing but pain and
are
misery
you kidding?
and division. Muslims, Jews aren't going anywhere, folks. We're in this together. And what we have to realize is that there are hate mongers who seek to divide us right now, like Jillian, who want to bring up Islamophobia and
Actually,
anti-Semitism.
I'm
who
not
want to get rid of
trying
all
to
Muslim
divide us at
immigrants.
all. Wajahat, you're
No
the
one
one
is going to
actually
leave.
who has
We are
tried to
here.
divide us. And your
We have
rant
to
this
make
past
a future
week.
together. We have to
What
call
I'm-
out the hate. We have to
exactly,
call out the white supremacy, the Islamic extremism,
So
the
how,
Jewish supremacy.
How do you address?
We have to call out
how
the
do you
terrorism.
address
We have to call out
the people that
we
want
have to
to
call
destroy
out Israel's
the West.
occupation. We have to call it Israel's occupation and genocide,
How do
and we
you
have to call out
address
Hamas
the percentage
and violent
of
extremism.
radical Islam
Pierce.
that wants to
Pierce.
destroy the
let me bring in Roland.
Just tell me how to address
Let me
that,
bring in
Wajahat.
Roland. Let me bring in Roland.
Pierce,
You don't have an
last
answer,
week I
do
was-
you?
Pierce, Jillian, I've had to sit here
I'll
and
take
listen to
it.
y'all go back and forth. Can I please
Okay,
make this
will you-
point?
Please,
Thank
yes,
you.
absolutely.
Pierce.
Yes.
Last week I was in Montgomery, Alabama for the 7th anniversary of the Montgomery bus boycott. And there is a National Memorial for Peace and Justice and Legacy Museum there that documents, that commemorates the documented 4,400 lynchings in this country. And there were more that took place. As an African American, when I understand what it means when you have a people who have a bullseye on their back, who are being targeted. I understand that. And so it is absolutely shameful that you cannot be at a Hanukkah celebration and it gets interrupted by mass violence because of two evil individuals. But I'm saying two evil individuals for a reason. Because under the legitimate FBI leadership of Christopher Wray, they said that the greatest threat in America is white domestic terrorism. So when I listen to people like Senator Tommy Tuberville talk about, getting rid of all Muslims in this country, as an African American, I then say, well, what about white Christians? Because when we look at violence in this country, mass shootings in this country, who typically commits them? And so I think anybody has to be very careful to not go down this path of, oh my God, all of them, when I, as an African American, who's also, Jillian, please allow me to finish. When I, as an African American, who's also a Christian, can literally look at the history of white Christians committing violence. And so what we cannot do is say, oh, it is the religion that's driving it, as opposed to it is these evil individuals. Piers, you properly talked about guns and how Australia, after that mass shooting, you said in the 90s, how they targeted. But the fact that they were successful should be a lesson to America. How about you also try that to deal with mass shootings in this country? And so it is wrong for us to go down this path of condemning an entire religion, condemning an entire group of people, whether they are Muslim, whether they are Jewish, whether they are Christian. What we have to recognize is there are evil people in this world, and our job is to root out evil and then how to impact people. But it's crazy to attack an entire religion and target all those people.
I agree with that. And look, Emily made the same point earlier because we were talking about it.
Senator Tommy Tuberville.
Yeah, but Emily,
Randy Fine.
Emily, here's the reality about
guys.
Here's the reality about United States, for example. You have roughly the same number of Jews and Muslims in the United States. It's about 4 or 5 million of each, right? In the UK, by comparison, there are as many Muslims in the UK as there are in the whole of America, but there are only 250,000 Jews. There's a massively disproportionate scenario in my country, which is why I think Jews in the UK and in London in particular feel particularly threatened when they see these large marches every weekend with people often brazenly taunting the Jewish community, or supporting Hamas or talking about a global intifada, whatever it may be. And we saw the same thing happening in Australia. And I do think it's really incumbent on governments that they have to clamp down on this openly threatening stuff in the streets towards Jewish people. Today's show is sponsored by Oxford.
Demographic. Okay, if you want to be a victim, you're entitled to do so. I'm going to speak for myself.
Say I'm an African American, not a victim. I'm actually an African American.
Let us speak.
Good for you. Play the victim. Go ahead. I don't care.
It's not. You can actually see
that. Let her finish her point.
Oh my God, Roland, you're a victim. Are you happy? You're a victim.
He's not playing the victim.
Great. So, secondly, I actually never thought I would say this. It's hard to agree with Cenk and Wajahat when they utter so much BS, but they made really great points, and I wrote them down. Cenk calls out the Old Testament for commanding to slaughter your enemies. That's why when anyone says the Quran or the word Muslim, I swap it with Torah or Jew. Argument failed, it doesn't work. The same way we're the chosen people, argument doesn't work. So we need to get better arguments than that. You cannot say because the Quran says it, all Muslims are bad. If you feel that way, go to the UAE, go to Riyadh, go to Saudi Arabia, any place in Saudi Arabia. You will come home and you will understand that there is mainly like peaceful, secular, intelligent Muslims. And I know that wasn't your point, Jillian. You were not saying all Muslims are bad. You were saying there's
the vast
10%.
Majority are peaceful, amazing people. What I'm trying to explain
which is why I'm going to bring this point home. Jillian, I'm getting there. So to bring this point home, the point is, good or bad, it doesn't matter. Take the religion out of it. I'm with Roland on this point. I could agree with everyone on this panel that we judge people by people. And it sounds so simple, right? But here's where we can take actionable measures to prevent this from happening again. This is an immigration problem, okay? I don't care if you're a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim, or an atheist. If you're coming to a country and you will not contribute / assimilate to this society, slap whatever religion you want onto it, that is the government's job to ensure that you will not come to this country and ruin it. If it happens to be Muslim, so be it. If that's a Jew, so be it. By the way, I'll point out, it's usually not the Jews that have the problem with assimilating.
But the problem, Emily, the problem with this is this. If you look at this father and son, for example, just the early reports coming out about them. The father had been there many years in Australia. He was a member of a shooting club. He seems to have assimilated perfectly fine, right? His son's in his mid-20s. His son had.
Missed a detail.
Wait a minute.
I missed a detail.
Sorry. Here's the reality. And the son had some dealings with some bad people. The government has phrased it, but not to the degree that caused them undue concern. Now, it may be in the proper investigation that now ensues that will be seen to be a mistake. It may also be that if that's viewed a mistake, to then allow his father to have 6 legally owned firearms in a country where that's very unusual was also a mistake. So there may well be an expose here of some serious failures of the process, because it seems on the face of it madness. If you've got the kid hanging out with some people who may be potentially radicalizing him, and you've got the father with 6 guns, that's not a good cocktail. But it doesn't change.
I agree. And Pierce, you present your question also to the other panelists. You present it as 2 extremes. It's either, well, you could ban all the Muslims, but then you won't get Ahmed al-Ahmed, or why is it this or that?
Well, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I'm just saying to you.
Emily, your point. I'm saying to you that
examining the assimilation of people is not as easy as it sounds, right? If it was, nobody would slip through the net.
Emily, you're speaking from both sides of your mouth. You talk about you want a middle, you say no one's going back, but you also are perfectly fine with blaming immigrants and sending them back. Listen, I have to defend immigrants here, all right? And let me use Emily's own logic, and let me use Jill's own logic. Number 1 domestic terror threat in America consistently, and this is a fact, has been radical right and white supremacist terrorism. That's a fact. We do not... And I have not, Roland hasn't, Cenk hasn't said, you know what, radicalize all white people.
But what statistics
Jillian, just let me finish, and then you could say it yourself.
Jillian, it came from the FBI director, Christopher Wray.
I'm just curious, I'm not Christian.
I believe that figure. Look, I'm going to check, I'm going to get that checked in real time. Hang on.
All right.
I'm going to check it in real time.
I actually am curious, I'm asking honestly.
My understanding of that claim is that is true. But I will get it double checked. I'll get it double checked. But my understanding is that is a true statement of fact.
The Administration's Department of Justice just removed it from their
website.
website.
But let Wajahat finish his point. Please don't all talk over each other. Wajahat.
Yeah, so let me just finish, Jillian, and then you can come in and interfere and do what you want. All right. Neither me, Cenk, or Roland has ever said, do onto white men what was done onto Muslims and black people and what's being done into Somalis. The racial profiling, the excessive demonization, kicking them all out, blaming all white people for the sins of white Christian nationalists or neo-Nazis or white supremacists, all right? The person who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, twice, 2 people did it, white men. The person who killed Charlie Kirk, allegedly a white man. The number 1 identity of mass shooters in America, want to take a guess? White men. Number 1 identity of child pedophiles, white men.
Ooh,
I have never said kick out all white people, racially profile white people, dehumanize white people. What you are doing is saying, if it's a Muslim, let's engage in Islamophobia. Let's demonize them. Let's hate them. Jillian, I know you're new to this. This has been happening for 25 years.
Let me ask you. Okay, but Wajahat, let me ask you a question.
Increased anti-Americanism.
Let me ask you. Wait a minute, Wajahat. Wajahat, a serious question. There are a lot of Muslim extremists. You'd accept that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And I've condemned it on your show.
I don't know the exact number. You don't. Gillian doesn't, right?
But it's not even close when it comes to American terrorism. It's not even close.
The point she's making its comparison to the total number of Jews on the planet, there are 1.6 to 2 billion Muslims, right? You only need a small number of those to be radicalized, to be extremist, and you will start to see a lot of bad stuff happening.
What I'm trying to say is, if you use that same logic here.
So my question is, what do you use? My question, Wajahat, for you is, what does the Muslim community do to root out these extremists in their midst.
Right.
Well, okay, I'm
And
gonna
not
flip
an
it up.
understanding.
No.
By the way, everything you said, any
No.
white person who's committed such an atrocity should obviously go to jail for the rest of their life.
What has Jillian done to
you're
root out
conflating
white
two
mass
issues.
shooters in America? Jillian, what have you done to root out and de-radicalize the white men in your community who are responsible for the #1 mass shooting in this country?
I would condemn and call it
For the #1
out, and
domestic
I
terror.
would, if I was on a jury, I would absolutely
No, what have you done?
vote for them
What have you
to
done?
go to prison. I'm also
And
not
that
doing
is the
anything
perfect, and that is
to go
the
after radical
point.
Muslims.
Piers,
I'm trying
Piers, the
to
question.
condemn
Piers.
all violence and form some common ground with you here, where radicalism across the board should be condemned. But I think what you're not understanding is when people are concerned, they're concerned, as far as I can tell, about assimilation. And in all the conversations that I have had about this, they are worried, like, hey, if it's 2 radical Muslims and 1 good guy, how are we going to keep the 2 radicals out? And if you've got, let's say, 1% of 2 billion people that want to bring down the West, like, what do you do about chance of death to America and Dearborn? This is what I'm saying. Like, what do you say
Piers,
about
I keep hearing
that?
assimilation. Piers, I keep hearing assimilation. And again, this is the point which you're making. You keep saying assimilation that is the answer. Again, what happens when people who are born here, who were brought here in chains, and their ancestors and their folks are here, and you still are dealing with white domestic terrorism? Is that assimilation? See, this is the problem. Y'all somehow think that assimilation, that's going to be the answer. That's not. It is not the answer.
Well,
and so it's nonsensical to think
Well,
so.
it depends what you mean. I mean, look,
Immigrants
let me
generally thrive
hang
in
on.
America.
Yeah, let them
Don't all
define
talk at
assimilation.
once. Let me bring in Cenk here.
I'll
Let
define
me
it.
bring in Cenk.
I'll define it. It's not chanting death to America. It's loving America.
Hang on,
wanting to
Jillian.
pursue the
It's
American
also not
dream.
participating in a
let me
violent
finish
insurrection.
talking.
That's kind of the answer,
All right.
in my opinion.
Can I say something, please, to Cenk? So, Cenk, this word assimilation, what it really means to me, at its purest, is that if you come to, say, the United States or the UK or Australia from another country, particularly another country which has a very different culture. So say you come from the Middle East and you come to live in America, live in London, live in Sydney, whatever. The word assimilate means that you do your best to be part of the new culture you're joining. What you don't do is put a drawbridge up and start your own culture within the culture of the country you go to at the expense of that nation's culture. I mean, at its purest...
That's not true.
Well, that is true.
Okay, if what you just described is the case, then the Italians, the Jewish, the Polish, every group that came to the United States did exactly what you just said. They had own communities, own culture. So, do you understand the history of America?
Yes, and I also understand that in the
And what you described.
well, I don't remember the Italians in America setting up their own rival court system, for example, unless I missed it.
Muslims haven't either.
Did they?
Yeah, no.
Because in the UK, we now have nearly 100 Sharia courts have been set up. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't remember that happening with any of the Poles or the Italians in the United States. That's what I'm talking about, Cenk.
Okay. All right. So what I can't stand is the double standard. So if, for example, Jillian said, what if 10% Muslims are violent? Okay. If you said that about Jewish people and you said, look, I'm not worried about most Jews, but, if 10% of Jews are treacherous and serve Israel first and betray their country.
There've been
Hold on. No, Jillian. Now you let me talk.
Gaza?
Okay? No, you let me talk. No. Okay. So now, if you said 10% of Jews are the real problem, everyone would be outraged, and rightfully so. That's not the right thing to say. But people say it blithely about Muslims, like we don't count, and it's no big deal to discriminate.
Yeah, that's true. People really don't care anymore. Like, you hear the word Muslim, like Muslims are terrorists. Like, it's just like, it's a normal day. It's a normal day. It mostly has to do with what happened on 9/11. To where they really convinced people that they really need to go to war in the Middle East. So, yeah, it's just propaganda. And that propaganda worked. It really did. But I'm not going to continue reacting to it. It's kind of long. So if you guys want to watch it, go ahead. You can see the title down there, what it is. So you can go watch it by yourselves. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you later.